Many of you have asked me to review and talk about the newest installment in the Harry Potter universe, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. So in this video, I'm not only going to review the film, but I'm going to break it down, explain how it relates to the larger Potter universe, point out Easter eggs, and give my thoughts on what's to come for the series of 5 films. Obviously, since I'm breaking down the film, there will be some spoilers, but the film has been out long enough that I'm sure that most of you have seen it. So let's start with the origins of the film. It follows a character named Newt Scamander, who was first mentioned in the very first Harry Potter book in 1997, The Philosopher's Stone, when Harry looks at the list of books he needs for school. One of those books is Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them by Newt Scamander. In 2001, Rowling went on to publish the same textbook that Harry studied. I actually had a copy of this book as a child, and I absolutely loved it. It was a really clever idea by Rowling, because it was bought as if it was Harry's book, and it even had some hilarious notes from Ron and Hermione. The book is full of all types of magical creatures that Newt discovered while traveling the world, and some even have illustrations that would inspire the concept art for this film. The book goes into great detail about who Newt is. He was born in 1897. His interest in fabulous beasts was encouraged by his mother, who was an enthusiastic breeder of fancy hippogriffs. Upon graduation from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Mr. Scamander joined the Ministry of Magic, in the Department of Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures. Now upon reading this, if you've seen the film, you know that Newt was kicked out of Hogwarts, which was not the case in this original book, as it says he graduated from Hogwarts. And I'll touch on his expulsion in a little bit. The book also goes into detail about all of his accomplishments, such as Newt being awarded Order of Merlin's second class in 1979 for his work with magical beasts. The film took the little bit of information that they had from this book, and is one and only mentioned in the original series, to turn this into a full feature film. A lot of franchises seem to be doing stuff like this. An example is Rogue One, who took the tiny bit of information from the opening crawl in A New Hope to make an entire prequel. Hardcore fans of Harry Potter films might have also caught Newt Scamander's name in an Easter egg in Prisoner of Azkaban, where he appears on the Marauders map. The team behind this film is the all-star team of a production crew. J.K. Rowling wrote the screenplay, and it was her first attempt at this form of writing. David Yates, who directed the final 4 Harry Potter films, is the director for this film. David Heyman, the producer of all 8 of the Harry Potter films, produces this, alongside producer Steve Kloves, who wrote the first 4 screenplays for the original series. And much of the crew that worked on the original series is working on this, like Stuart Craig, the man behind all of the production designs, including Hogwarts Castle itself. So the film had a pretty easy path to success. On top of all of that, they perfectly cast all of the characters in the story, especially Eddie Redmayne as the main hero Newt. He perfectly shows off the character's uncomfortable and awkward interactions with other people.
Well, I'm sure people like you too, huh?
Not really, no. I annoy people.
And his amazing chemistry with the beast that he has so much passion for.
What, you rescue these creatures?
Yes, that's right. Rescue, nurture, and protect them.
No one understands his fascination with these creatures, and at the time, no one had gone out of their way to learn or protect these creatures until Newt wrote his best-selling book.
So I'm writing a book about magical creatures.
Like an extermination guide?
No, a guide to help people understand why we should be protecting these creatures instead of killing them.
Goldstein?
In a lot of ways, he's a lot like Hagrid. Both are misfits, both have an obsession with magical creatures that no one understands, and both were expelled from Hogwarts. But the most interesting thing for me about their parallels and expulsion from Hogwarts is the fact that they were both expelled for something that they didn't do. And both had Dumbledore to stand up for them in favor of not expelling them.
Thrown out of Hogwarts for endangering human life. Yet one of your teachers argued strongly against your expulsion. Now, what makes Albus Dumbledore so fond of you?
Hagrid was framed by Voldemort for opening the Chamber of Secrets, and Newt took the blame for his good friend, and possibly more than a friend, Leta Lestrange. Lestrange is of course a very well-known name in the Harry Potter series, the most famous Lestrange being Bellatrix.
I've heard of that family. Aren't they kind of, you know?
Not much is known about Leta, but I'm excited to learn more. From what we've seen and heard about her so far, she's nothing like her other family members, seeing as she doesn't fit in with them, which can only mean good things about who she is as a person. So what did I think of the film? I liked it a lot, but not as much as the original films, which is of course expected, but overall I did really enjoy it. The film is set in America in 1926, which is actually the same year that Tom Riddle, or Lord Voldemort, was born, which I thought was cool. They were spot on in their making of 1926 New York, with fabulous set designs that Stuart Craig was behind. But not only was the visual part of the time period spot on, but also the way that they portrayed 1926 in general. Some examples of this is Tina not being allowed to have men in her apartment building.
I'm not supposed to have men on the premises.
Another thing is the fact that they used the death sentence, something that we would never see today.
You know that.
You are therefore guilty of a treasonous betrayal of your fellow wizards and are sentenced to death.
Something that I really like about this movie is that it's not the same story rehashed as the original series. It's so incredibly different and expands on the wizarding world we all know and love in such a great way. You can really tell that the story is coming from Rowling, unlike some other things that were recently released into the Harry Potter universe. Rowling went from the point of view of children to adults, and with that came more adult themes and plot lines. Two more adult themes to point out is that it focuses on child abuse, and also a lot of love interests and even sex. Sex not ever being brought up in the original series.
You know how to read minds.
Oh, don't worry, honey. Most guys think what he was thinking first time they see me.
Rowling no longer had us follow a trio like the original series, but a foursome. And not one of these four characters is similar to the original trio. They're all original character creations. While this film is very different from the original series, it still reminds us of all the things that we love about this incredible universe. It opens with the classic Harry Potter intro. It then cuts straight to a familiar style of giving us crucial information without saying anything, when they show us the newspapers in the opening, something we saw in Order of the Phoenix, which coincidentally was the first Potter film that David Yates directed, so I have a feeling that Yates had something to do with that creative decision. Obviously, the biggest difference between this film and the original series is that this takes place in America rather than England. And I love the way that they started the film off with the Statue of Liberty. America does things a lot differently than England. Instead of the Ministry of Magic, there's MACUSA, the Magical Congress of the United States of America. Instead of a Minister of Magic, there's a President. And while Britain calls them Muggles, Americans call them No-Mages.
The No-Mag. No magic. The non-wizard.
Sorry, we call them muggles.
The laws that America has about No-Mages are very different than Britain's, which I found pretty interesting.
I know that you have rather backwards laws about relations with non-magic people. That you're not meant to befriend them, that you can't marry them, which seems mildly absurd to me.
America fears that the wizarding world will be exposed to No-Mages. The creatures in this film were magnificent, and my favorite scene by far is when they go inside Newt's suitcase. You can tell that J.K. Rowling is back in the writing chair. Only she could come up with something this brilliant. My favorite creatures in this film were the Swooping Evil, which we saw in the original Fantastic Beasts book, the Thunderbird, which was made special for this film, the Bowtruckle, which was mentioned a few times in the original series, and the Niffler. The Niffler was one of my favorite creatures in the original series, when Hagrid did a Magical Creatures lesson with them in Goblet of Fire. The Niffler is hilarious in this film and adds so much comedy. Speaking of comedy, this film did not disappoint in making me laugh. My favorite character interactions were those with Newt and Jacob.
You just, pop this on.
Okay.
Now, there's absolutely nothing for you to worry about.
Tell me, has anyone ever believed you? You told them not to worry?
Dan Fogler, who plays Jacob, did a phenomenal job on his own as well. He's such a great physical actor. Another great scene was when they argue which school is better, Ilvermorny, the wizarding school in America, or Hogwarts.
Ilvermorny? It's only the best wizard school in the whole world.
I think you'll find that the best wizarding school in the world is Hogwarts.
The action scenes in this film were phenomenal as well, and I love the way that they used apparating and disapparating during the fight scenes. These dueling scenes were pretty short, so I'm excited to see what they do with more elaborate duels and fight scenes like in the original series. And if they incorporate the unique additions like apparating and disapparating during the fight, I think we're in store for some really incredible action scenes. Now, as much as I love this movie, I do have some problems with it. I feel that the addition of the Shaw family, being Henry, Henry Jr., and Langdon, were unnecessary and made the film a bit cluttered with characters. When introducing a new group of characters the way this film does, you need to lower the amount of main characters you have. And they already have so many with Newt, Queenie, Tina, Jacob, Creedence, Grindelwald, and with Grindelwald basically came a whole other character, Graves, and not to mention all the MACUSA employees and the president. While most of those characters had a big impact on the film, the Shaw family didn't really do or add much to the story, so I just felt that they were an unnecessary addition. I also find that there are a lot of plot holes with the ending. The first thing is when Creedence goes berserk and starts tearing down buildings. There's no way that he didn't badly hurt or kill someone when he knocked those buildings down. It's like Man of Steel all over again. And in Man of Steel, Zack Snyder, the director, had to address this issue in the sequel. This is especially out of place for Fantastic Beasts because they make such a big deal out of one person being killed.
And you see fit to tell us only when a man has been killed?
Who's been killed?
Another thing that's a huge plot hole is when they wipe the memory of every no-maj in the city. They don't take into account the many other things that would expose them. For one thing, we know that they took pictures of the event.
Look, take photos.
The rain that wipes away their memory isn't going to get rid of those pictures. And you might say that they got rid of it later with wizards going around, but there's no way that they would be able to find every last bit of evidence.
We cannot obliviate an entire city.
I feel it was a rather cheap way to fix everything and to end the conflict. Other than that though, there's not much else that I disliked about the movie. Now some Easter eggs that I spotted. There's the simple one, of course, of them using a lot of the same spells that they used in the original series.
Trificus Totalis.
Petrificus Totalis.
There's the giant pensieve that makes an appearance, which was one of Dumbledore's most useful tools, but this one is on a much larger scale. There was the mention of a squib.
You're a squib, Creedence.
And what a squib is a child born from two magical parents, but not inheriting their magical abilities. They put up a protective shield, just like the one that they put up over Hogwarts and Deathly Hallows. The reveal of Grindelwald is very similar to the reveal of Barty Crouch Jr. Grindelwald turning from Graves into himself, and Barty Crouch Jr. in Goblet of Fire turned from Mad-Eye Moody to himself. There are a ton of house elves in this film doing slave work like shining wands or serving drinks at a bar.
What, ain't you ever seen a house elf before?
The clock in Makusa that shows how much danger the Wizarding World is bears a close resemblance to the Weasley's clock that shows where each member of the family is, or if they're in danger. The ceiling in Makusa shows the sky outside, just like the Great Hall at Hogwarts. The Deathly Hallows necklace that Grindelwald gives Creedence is a lot like the one that Xenophilius Lovegood wore, and there are of course loads of Easter eggs that pertain to Gellert Grindelwald. Grindelwald we of course know from the Deathly Hallows. He was Dumbledore's love interest when he was young. He and Dumbledore were close and pursued the Deathly Hallows together to become the Master of Death, and had plans to reveal the Wizarding World to Muggles to take over, and it was all done for the greater good, a line used a few times in this film.
Mass slaughter for the greater good, you mean?
As I mentioned earlier, the opening with the newspaper gives us a lot of information on Grindelwald's rampage. From the original series, we know that he never took his rampage to England, so it makes sense that he would be in America. Although he didn't get much screen time in this film, Johnny Depp I feel was the perfect choice to play Grindelwald, and I'm excited to see what he has to offer to the character in the later movies.
Do you think you can hold me?
I absolutely love how they handled Grindelwald's character. The way he manipulates Creedence is spot on to how his character should be. The film also displays his immense magical powers. He infiltrated the Ministry single-handed, something not even Voldemort could do. Grindelwald also took on multiple Aurors in a duel, and had it not been for Newt jumping in from behind with a sneak attack, he might have actually defeated them. Speaking of Grindelwald's arc, the film also has a huge expansion of the series and what happened the night Ariana, Albus Dumbledore's sister, died, with the introduction of the Obscurus.
Before wizards went underground, when we were still being hunted by muggles, young wizards and witches sometimes tried to suppress their magic to avoid persecution. So instead of learning to harness or to control their powers, they developed what was called an Obscurus.
Rowling's explanation of this creature is this. An Obscurus is developed under very specific conditions. Trauma associated with the use of magic, and a conscious attempt to suppress it. This perfectly describes what happened to Ariana, and explains why she was the way that she was. She couldn't control her powers because of the Muggle boys that went after her. In Fantastic Beasts, we learn that a witch or wizard doesn't normally last past the age of 10. This brings us to Creedence Barebone, the Obscurial we are introduced to in this film. Creedence is a fascinating character because he's the longest living Obscurial that they've ever seen, living way past the age of 10. This made him immensely powerful, and he did a lot of destruction on his rampage. Just like Ariana, he had trauma associated with the use of magic, because his mother despised witches and wizards, and spent her life hunting them down. On top of that, his mother regularly beat him. Creedence takes a lot of abuse from everyone in this film, and it's sad to see how abused he is physically and mentally, with Grindelwald using him and taking advantage of him, and he even gets bullied in his daily day-to-day life.
Here you go, freak. Why don't you put that in the trash where you all belong?
He has a truly tragic end to his arc, and his arc actually ends up showing how brave and kind-hearted Newt is. He's the only one that can calm him down and help him.
I'm not here to hurt you.
Overall, this film was really good in my opinion. This is only the first installment in a series of 5 films. So what's to come in the future films? The big answer in my opinion is the epic battle between Dumbledore and Grindelwald, where Dumbledore famously defeated him. If that's the case, which I'm 90% sure it is, then we have a lot to look forward to, especially if JK continues to write. That's the overall direction of the entire series. but what do we have in store for the next film that's going to be released in November 2018? So far, there isn't a ton of information on the sequel, and it's not even named yet, but we do know it takes place shortly after this film, that Dumbledore will be in it, and Jude Law was cast to play his younger persona. It's going to take place in Paris, and Newt will be taking on Gellert Grindelwald, who escaped McCuse's custody and has been gathering more followers. A quote directly from Warner Brothers about the sequel was, "The only one who might be able to stop him is a wizard he once called his dearest friend, Albus Dumbledore. But Dumbledore will need help from the wizard who thwarted Grindelwald once before, his former student Newt Scamander." So it looks like Dumbledore will be helping to catch Grindelwald, but I think it very unlikely that he will come face to face with him. I'm basing this off the fact that he dreaded seeing and taking Grindelwald down so much that he allowed the wizarding world to suffer for longer than it should have, and he only agreed to go after Grindelwald after many pleas from the wizarding community. So I don't think that we'll see them come face to face until the final movie, and I think it will be a very powerful moment. Dumbledore, who of course still has feelings for Gellert, and Gellert probably feels the same. I'm thinking that Dumbledore is going to be more like a general in this film, giving commands to Newt and the others, but never actually going after Grindelwald himself. The 4 main heroes from the first film are all coming back, and are much more likely to do the heavy lifting for now. The 4 heroes, of course, including Newt, Queenie, Tina, and Jacob. Warner Brothers said that this film would test their loyalties as they face new perils in an increasingly dangerous and divided wizarding world. We were left with sort of a cliffhanger at the end of the last film, where Queenie goes to see Jacob at his bakery, and it looks like she's about to break the law that wizards can't interact with no-mages. And judging by the fact that Jacob is a key player in the next film, I feel it highly likely that this is the case. Jacob and Queenie's sort of fleshed out love story will probably expand in the next film as well. Then of course we have Newt and Tina's romance, which was pretty prevalent in the first film, but not as much as Jacob and Queenie's. It will probably get much more fleshed out in the films to come. We know of course that the two do end up together and get married from the book Fantastic Beasts that says, "Now retired, he lives in Dorist with his wife Porpentina." Later on, I suspect that there might be a love triangle between Newt, Tina, and Lena Lestrange, which could be interesting from what we've seen and heard so far.
She was a taker. You need to give her.
Lita has been cast, and Zoe Kravitz will take on the role. She had a brief appearance in the first film, being in a picture that Newt carries around with him. Another direction that they could go is to introduce Newt's older brother, Theseus, who was a war hero.
Theseus Scamander? The war hero?
No, this is his little brother.
Warner Brothers also released information that there will be a wizarding circus in the sequel that will introduce a few new characters, including a performer in the circus, played by Claudia Kim, a wizard named Yusuf Kama, bounty hunter named Grimson, and a wizard named Skender who runs the wizarding circus. Overall, I'm excited to finally have a new Harry Potter story that's actually written by Rowling. I think she's done an excellent job so far, and I'm excited to see what's in store for the future of the series. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you haven't already, you can check out my Twitter, which I'll link in the description. I do behind the scenes stuff and keep you guys updated on videos to come. Again, thanks so much for the support, and thanks for watching, guys.